Okay, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon for the, I do not know how many water lecture here in the Center of Development Research, the University of Bonn. We have a particular reason for organizing it today. Tomorrow is a World Water Day, and if you have seen the brochure which was masterminded by UNESCO, you see the wonderful slogan which I understood was suggested by someone from Asia: water, water everywhere, only if we share. It means, and as astronauts reported from above, our planet looks like blue, blue because of water. And we are here discussing sometimes why this blue planet might be so unevenly distributed among its inhabitants. Water, water everywhere, only if we share. The topic of this year is the International Year of Water Cooperation, and also the World Water Day, which will be centrally commemorated tomorrow in The Hague, is on water cooperation. We decided that if we talk about cooperation, then it should be also a cooperative event. And as you see in this table, 4 people are sitting here. Myself is representing the Global Water System Project, and I'm moderating this session. My name is János Bogardi, and I already retired, so I have time to prepare this type of questions. The 3 other persons whom we were able to win to this session are very active in the area of cooperation with water. Let me introduce them first from right to the left, and then the conference is, or the lecture is meant that all 3 panelists are invited to make a statement of about 10 minutes, followed by some kind of kick-off questions from me, and then we expect that you are following these kick-off questions with questions, asking them their experience, asking their opinion, asking to answer your concerns concerning water, how to share, how to cooperate over water. Water cooperation should not end with this panel session. At the end of it, around 5:30, there will be the opportunity to taste some modified form of water, unalcoholic, I was told, and those who are very concerned, you can drink in 1 cup of coffee 140 liters of water. Please don't ask me to explain that this accounting is somehow faulty. So let me introduce 3 speakers and panelists. To my right is Mrs. Heide Jäcker from the Federal Ministry of Environment, Nature Conservation and Nuclear Safety from here in Bonn. She is head of the Division of Cooperation in International River Basins, Freshwater Management Conventions, International Freshwater Protection Law since 2005. She is graduated in law, so we are having also an interdisciplinary panel, as you will see. She is a lawyer, having had experience with representing Germany in several river basin organizations, and also working on how to bring the European Commission Water Framework Directive into national federal law. To my immediate left is Dr. Sergio Zelaya Bonilla, head of the Policy Advocacy on Global Issues Unit of the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, UNCCD, of which the Secretariat is also located here in Bonn. Dr. Zelaya Bonilla is an economist and with very strong experience with environmental issues, including environmental policy and advocacy, both in the intergovernmental context and also now in the UN international context. He was Minister of Environment in his native country of Honduras, so was particularly involved in negotiating several conventions, and now as member of a UN Secretariat, which is actually a secretariat and a convention. He has an experience what he has done as a representative of a member state. Okay. His contribution is definitely will be how land degradation, desertification, water shortage, and water stress contributes and influences cooperations over water. To my extreme left is Mr. Ben van der Wetering. He is a chemical engineer by academic education from the Technical University of Enschede in the Netherlands, and has long experience in the Dutch Water Resources Administration, the National Institute for Public Water Supply, and then in the National Institute of Inland Water Management and Wastewater Treatment, representing the Netherlands in several international fora, including also Commission of Protection of Marine Environment in the Northeast Atlantic, and was a co-author of the European Marine Strategy Directive. Since 2007, he is back in the freshwater domain as Secretary General of the International Commission for the Protection of the Rhine, of which the center is in Koblenz, so at least he is from the so-called Rheinschiene, if not from Bonn. So, as you see, we have three panelists. These three panelists represent three different dimensions of water cooperation. One, a river basin management organization, a river basin protection organization, a national government, Germany, which is very much in a multilateral cooperation, and one who is coming from a UN organization. So as you see, the scope from river basin to a national state with all its links, and then to the global scale, and this will be the sequence also of the presentations. So the floor first is yours, Mr. De Wetering.
Not because I didn't have time, but I thought it would be a good start of this session to start with a short video presentation that we prepared last year about the work and the history of the International Commission for the Protection of the Rhine. It will take about 7.5 to 8 minutes, and it gives in a very brief nutshell an overview of our work.
The Rhine is a source of life in the heart of Western Europe, a lifeline for hundreds of species, varied habitats, and for man. The Rhine has many aspects. Sometimes it's wild nature, and sometimes it's city life on the banks of the river. The river connects more than 50 million people and their widely varied mentalities. Everybody has his or her own personal view of the Rhine, be it private or professional. Responsibility is shared, even by wine growers and farmers. The more environmentally friendly they work, the easier it is to produce drinking water from Rhine water. No matter how insignificant the individual pollution may be, in the end, there is too great a strain on the ecosystem. For the developed world, this is a matter of concern. A polluted Rhine is a joint problem. 9 countries share a common destiny and cooperate in the ICPR, the International Commission for the Protection of the Rhine. Delegates discuss up to 70 times per year how to sustainably use and protect the resources in the entire river basin. They will only achieve their targets in common consent and in spite of different characters, mentalities, political mandates, and languages: French, Dutch, and German. In technical groups, experts struggle to achieve an agreement on details. And they are very successful, as years of cooperation have created mutual confidence. That was not always the case. Formerly, distrust was an obstruction to water protection. There was concurrence between the states. They considered the Rhine to be a waste bin, and it became a sewer. Along the Rhine, an industrial density developed as nowhere else in the world. Navigation rapidly increased, and the Rhine developed into an important international waterway. In particular, the chemical industry and the metallurgy industry benefited from the Rhine. The river gave them a possibility for considerable economic growth. After an accident, their behavior changed. On November 1, 1986, a warehouse burned down at the Sandoz AG near Basel. The firefighting water washed up to 30 tons of pesticides into the Rhine. Fish and other organisms died along hundreds of kilometers of the Rhine. People protested vehemently. This was a historic opportunity. Government ministers adopted the Rhine Action Program. They wanted the Rhine to become clean enough for salmon to return to the river. All initiatives are coordinated by the ICPR Secretariat in Koblenz. There is the sense of a new era about to dawn. Politics, municipalities, industry, and citizens all join forces. There is a huge media response. The ICPR becomes a pioneer in water protection. Within 10 years, the amount of noxious chemicals discharged is to be reduced by 50%. Along the Rhine, scientists analyze the pollutant content of water, organisms, and sediments. The target is less and less toxic wastewater and improved accident prevention. Today, in case of an accidental spill, a warning and alarm plan warns people downstream and beyond the borders. The number and effectiveness of wastewater treatment plants constructed along the Rhine is unequaled in Europe. Even industry joins in the efforts. Industrial wastewater treatment plants, control centers, and fire brigades help to achieve a clean Rhine and improve the general image. By the mid-90s, the water is much cleaner than expected. Many sensitive plant and animal species return to their former habitats. The amounts of toxic substances discharged are massively reduced. At last, the water is even clean enough for salmon to return. An important symbol for the ICPR and its success. Water quality is good, but more has still to be achieved. The salmon are used to fighting their way to the upstream spawning grounds. They jump as high as 3 meters and a distance of 5 meters. But for a long time it was not possible to surmount these obstacles until the first fish ladders helped to pass the locks. The first major fish passage, located at the Iffezheim hydropower plant, cost 9 million euros. In the meantime, many more migration structures have been built. This fish ladder bridges 11 meters of elevation. A success, but not enough. We still have too many artificially straightened riverbanks, and river meadows and natural floodplains are cut off from the river. If habitats are not interconnected, the river changes its course. Floods belong to the normal cycle of the year. Having lost its former floodplains, the Rhine finds new paths to follow. In 1993 and 1995, the flood crested at almost 11 meters and caused considerable economic damage. And again, the ICPR takes a leading role. In 1998, the Action Plan on Floods is passed. Its target, to extend the floodplains of the Rhine and make them functional. Many flood retention areas are created behind the dikes and flooded as water levels rise. The biocenosis of the floodplains requires regular floods, even though some species do not appreciate wet feet. Floodplains, being natural flood buffers and nurseries for numerous species, are a precious asset for the Rhine. If habitats along the river are interconnected, the salmon too will thrive, and so will man at long last. Despite all efforts, there are new challenges ahead. The ICPR is prepared to face them with its experience and together with its experts.
Thank you very much. The kick-off questions will come after the three statements.
I would like to add some small statements.
Please.
Well, the ICPR is in existence now for more than 60 years, 62 years. The first meeting was in 1950, 11th of July. But still, I cannot give you a general recipe for building cooperation. That is depending on a lot of different circumstances. What you need is time. It took us more than about these 60 years. We are now in good cooperation. It takes trust in each other, confidence, and at certain points, political courage. You saw the fire at the Sandoz factory in Basel. At that moment, ministers decided as a general goal for the work of the ICPR that the salmon should come back. Nobody knew that this was possible, but still they decided that that should be the general goal. So it takes these four elements. It takes time, it takes trust in each other, it takes confidence in results, and it takes at certain points courage to take decisions that are, well, unprecedented. That's what I would like to add.
Thank you very much. We have the Rhine, the jewel of Germany, but Germany has also other problems, so the floor is yours.
Thank you. So my name is Heidi Jekel. I'm coming from the Federal Environment Ministry here in Bonn, and I was already introduced. At the moment I'm head of delegation of the German delegation in 6 international river basin commissions. But we also work in bilateral commissions, and I brought some slides just to clarify a bit what we are doing in Germany. So you see here a map of the river basins in Europe, and you see Germany is in the middle of Europe. So we have a lot of contacts with other countries which are surrounding us, and of course we share a lot of waters with them. So if you try to cut that down to Germany, you see that we have 10 river basins in Germany, most of them transboundary. The 6 bigger international ones are the Meuse, the Rhine, the Ems, the Elbe, the Oder, and the Danube. You only see parts of the Danube because it's the most international river basin in the world, with 19 countries sharing it, and of course you only see the German part of it. And we work in all those 6 international river basins in international river basin commissions or bodies, not always commissions. And just to give you an impression, all of those commissions, they are based on international treaties. One is the Rhine Commission, we just heard about. The Rhine modernized its agreement in 1999, but the first convention had been of 1963, and as Ben already mentioned, the first meeting was in 1950. The Elbe, that was after the fall of the Iron Curtain, the agreement was from 1990. That was the first international agreement of the unified Germany. the Danube has an agreement from 1994. All these commissions have own budgets, so we, the countries, the member states, we contribute to the budget, and the budget is according to the size. Our contributions are calculated on the basis of the size or the share of the basin or the population. We have rules of procedure, so we have rules of play, how to deal with each other, how to vote, how to prepare meetings, how to hire the staff of the secretariat, for example, Ben. And the decisions of those commissions, they are not legally binding. So they have only the status of recommendations. But these recommendations are rather strong, so there is some political and public pressure behind them. And so if one country doesn't follow what has been agreed on, there can be rather heavy public and also political pressure from the other countries. We have agreed organizational structures, and I just continue the information on the Rhine. So this is the basin of the Rhine. It's only one of what, as I said, from 6 international river commissions, but it's one of the bigger ones. So you see 200,000 square kilometers, nearly 16 million inhabitants, 20 million people depend with their drinking water on the Rhine, and a lot of the Rhine mainstream and also its tributaries is navigable. So you see a lot of competition between protection and water uses. So that is also what Mr. Bogardi said in the beginning. Water everywhere, only if we share. And you see we share a lot of the Rhine water with other countries. Of course, it's not only about international coordination, it's also about national coordination. We are a federal country, and we have 8 German federal states in the basin. So my ministry is coordinating on international level, but also on national level. This is for the river basin commissions, but Germany also has bilateral commissions with our neighboring countries, especially Poland, the Czech Republic, Austria, and the Netherlands. So there we also meet regularly with regard to our transboundary waters. So not the basin perspective, but our waters which we share directly. Then Germany is also very active in the UNECE Water Convention. The UNECE is the United Nations Economic Commissions for Europe. It's one of the 5 regional UN commissions, and this commission has since 20 years a water convention. For the moment it's only a regional convention, but it has just, an amendment has just come into force to open this convention worldwide. So this convention can become a global convention. And it's about transboundary cooperation, what you should do with regard to get into contact with your neighbors, what you should discuss with them, what you should coordinate with them, so a rather detailed convention. There is another UN convention from 1997, that's the UN Convention on the Right on Non-Navigational Use of International Watercourses. This is not, I would not say it's not in competition with the UNECE Convention, it's complementary and it's not into force yet. So this is another possibility of a global convention. Germany has ratified both. So we think there is a need for a global instrument, and the countries may choose for the moment if they take one, the regional one, which is more detailed, more practical oriented, or the UN Water Courses Convention, which is perhaps more from the legal side, but also very useful and very interesting. And of course, Germany is an EU country, so we are also obliged to implement European water law, for example, the European Water Framework Directive, which also refers to cooperation in international river basins. So for us, for Germany, it's some sort of a cascade. We have the UN Convention, which is not into force, we have the UNECE Water Convention with 20 years of experience, and we have the EU level with the EU Water Framework Directive. And all these levels for us, they fit into each other. So, and we have a lot of experience with regard to water management, and so we try to disseminate our knowledge and to learn from other countries on all those levels. And on all those levels, current or very urgent issues are discussed, like climate change and its impacts, the adaptation to climate change. So the Danube and the Rhine, for example, work on climate adaptation strategies for the basin. So the issues temperature, scarcity, low water, of course, are in the discussions with regard to that. Integration of water policy issues into other policies, a very difficult issue. You know perhaps about this nexus approach, which is in the discussion to make clear that there is a need for integration. So this is just setting the scene of what we are doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this very comprehensive overview of the Federal Republic's activities in water cooperation. And I'm very happy that we selected this sequence, because from a very focused Rhine perspective, you brought it into the European and a little bit to the global scale, and this is a proper transition to the UNCCD. We are leaving a little bit of, let's say, Fortress Europe and the happy water-rich Rhine basin into an area where our third panelist is very active, semi-arid states, desertification, land and water, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bogardi. It's always a pleasure for me to be here, especially today, in the World Forest Day, today. Tomorrow is World Water Day, and the day after tomorrow is the World Meteorological Day. So we have these 3 days very busy, the 3 days related to what we do in these terrestrial ecosystems. I just want to, after these 2 presentations that go very touch the practical approach, I just would like to share with you a couple of some messages on the what is it that water scarcity, which is the phenomenon that occurs in dry land, dry, arid, semi-arid, and vulnerable ecosystems, especially terrestrial ecosystems where people live, and also flora and fauna you can find. How this water scarce environment, how if there are some opportunities, potential opportunities for cooperation. But first, maybe we should mention what is water scarcity. As the UNCCD, and I see a couple of colleagues here from the UN as well that belong to the UN Water Coalition. The UN Water has defined water scarcity as this occurs when the aggregate impact of all users overruns the water supply or quality under prevailing institutional arrangements, to the extent that the demand, including that demand that comes from the environment, cannot be fully satisfied anymore. So this is the definition that UN Water, we have at UN Water on water scarcity phenomenon. The UN estimates that by 2025, some 40% of the whole population of the world would be facing water scarcity. And this is a possibility that will occur, and there's the likelihood is there, and by just being the likelihood there, the amplification of this, and the relevancy of this issue is already put at the highest level possible. And this is more relevant to the current inhabitants of those areas that are likely to be water scarce areas, the people who already live there, and the decision that they will be making, men and women, to either remain in these areas or to migrate in the near future. This is the second message I want to share with you. The other one, the third message I want to just share with you is that over time, water scarcity results in serious consequences to land and soils, the properties of land and soils, setting forth an increasing cycle of desertification and land degradation, and if unchecked, is very difficult to stop. Why is this? Well, the fourth message is on sustainable land management. On sustainable land management practice have a direct impact on water availability and, of course, on water scarcity. Overcultivation, overgrazing, and deforestation put great strain on terrestrial water resources by reducing the fertile topsoil on vegetation cover, and within the current scenarios of global markets, globalization, and also the linkages, the priorities of national economies to guarantee and ensure food security target, this unsustainable land management practice may lead, for example, to greater dependence on irrigation and with all the consequences on water availability. These issues of land degradation, which we call desertification when it occurs in arid, semi-arid, and dry subhumid areas, and also the drought that impacts a drought realize and make in this ecosystem, have serious economic impacts and social impacts on these populations. And these serious impacts hamper and put at risk the implementation, the achievement of the Millennium Development Goals, and also the future that is in front of us, the future that we want. And if, as you know, the future that we want is the name, the title of the document that came out of Rio +20. And in this conference, many issues were raised related to water and land and agriculture for security, energy, and water. It was mentioned over there that 9 billion people will be living in this planet by 2050. Hunger and overconsumption will be coinciding at that time. Malnutrition and food insecurity will be increased. The food prices will be more volatile than we have today. Droughts, land degradation, climate change, water scarcity, deforestation, marine fish stock depletion, the expansion of biofuels. This is the future that we are heading towards. But the future that we want is a world with happy and strong communities, with thriving economies, with healthy and resilient populations and ecosystems, and I'm citing the Rio +20 document. The provision for food, nutrition, energy, water, and other products and services essential for the human well-being. So the message here is how can we bridge between the principles and norms of integrated water and land management with the Sustainable Development Goals that are being negotiated within the next 18 months. Is there a way that we can address jointly these issues of water and land, and how can this approach be implemented? Two more messages I want to share with you, Janos, and then I will be finished. We think that relevant policies or policy-relevant issues must acknowledge explicitly and clearly the linkage between the agricultural production and the linkage of land water. This recognition of this linkage between agriculture and land and water could lead to targeted policies that contribute to the nexus just mentioned, food security, the water and energy nexus, which is at the heart of the sustainable development issue. And where the message boils down to reversing and transforming unsustainable land management practice by those proven sustainable practices that are out there with scientific innovation and also with traditional knowledge. These sustainable land management practices could also increase the carbon stocks that are contained in the soil, can help to preserve the habitats and the genetic resources, and reverse at the end land degradation and desertification trends. The last one is, what does all this have to do with the UNCCD, the institution that I work? Well, we work actually in water scarcity and water stress and arid, semi-arid and dry subhumid ecosystem. So the convention calls for strategies that reverse and reverse land degradation, restores dryland ecosystems, and with all the challenges that this signifies, not only the environmental challenges, but also the social and economic challenges. The UNCCD parties have been have been prioritizing the issue of water and drought as a necessity to have some policy relevant themes that could enable them to have these policies on water and drought in place at the national level. And the UNCCD has been mandated to enable the countries, particularly the vulnerable countries, but also the cooperation countries, the developed countries that cooperate with the developing countries in order to have this policy relevant framework in place. Just to have to mention what we did just last week in Geneva within WMO and FAO and UNCCD, we organized the high-level meeting on national drought policies. This is the second meeting on drought that has occurred in the last 3 decades. Some of us were already around 3 decades ago, but most of you were not. And that was the last time this issue of drought was discussed at the international level, and last week. And UN Water, through the Capacity Development Program, has a targeted program to develop these national capacities to lift all the limitations on setting up, assessing, and developing national policies on drought. The same, we believe that could happen on water and land, and this is our target for the next 18 months for the Sustainable Development Goals. These are the main messages. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to bring the issue to the global scale and also to extend it that we are not only talking about water when we need water cooperation. It is agriculture, it is land, it is livelihood, it is the nexus what you also have mentioned. I believe all three panelists emphasized that water cooperation can only thrive if there is a will. There is a will at political level, but also in the public sphere. It is also obvious that we are not talking about ad hoc solutions. There are time needed, engagement needed, and actually it means cooperation is needed. We cannot solve it with one sparkle of idea. Now, let me put first the three provoking questions to the three panelists, and ladies first this time. You mentioned that Germany adopted the global convention, even so it is not yet in power. Germany, as a European country, is member of the UNECC Water Convention, and as member of the European Union, it is subject to implement the European Water Framework Directive. So there is a lot of frameworks available in Germany. Now, the uppermost is not yet officially in force. Would it help other countries to move forward water cooperation should the UN Water Convention or the non-navigational use be in force? And whether the experience Germany is making, both with these two conventions and with the European Framework Directive, how far can it be exported? We are export world champions with cars and machineries, why not with water management?
A very good question, thank you very much. Yes, I think the UN Water Convention should come into force, because our experience with regard to the Water Framework Directive, but also with regard to the UNECE Water Convention, is that if you have a settled framework in which you can maneuver, in which gives you enough leeway to adapt it to your interests or to your needs, then it really helps, because then you have some sort of common ground, some sort of common principles or rules of play, which really help to develop transboundary cooperation or transboundary contacts. For the EU water, so yes, I think there should be a global instrument, and the easiest, of course, it's not easy, but the easiest would be to ratify the UN Water Convention, because there the main principles are are written down, and they are a start to, or a basis to start cooperation on some sort of agreed language, agreed rules. Then to export the Water Framework Directives experience or the UNECE conventions experience, yes. Of course, you cannot apply the EU Water Framework Directive directly somewhere else because it's rather sophisticated, it's very detailed, you need a lot of preconditions in your country to fulfill the provisions in the Water Framework Directive, but the principal rules, yes, you can export them. The same goes for the UNECE Water Convention, which is more detailed than the UN Convention, but which is some sort in between of the EU Water Framework Directive and the more abstract UN Convention. So, and this UNECE Convention, it's valid for the big Europe, so not only EU, for the whole of Europe, even in the UNECE also North America is part, but not party to the UNECE Convention. But we have, all, for example, all the Eastern countries as parties in the convention. So we have a lot of experience which goes beyond the EU, and perhaps it's a bit too sophisticated level. So, and we export already with the UNECE Water Convention a lot of knowledge also into countries which are non-UNECE countries. So this process is already going on. And of course we, as Germany, we used our experiences which we have gathered also with regard to the Water Framework Directive and try to sell it and to explain how we do it. And it's about talking, talking and talking.
Thank you. So welcome. This is a proper way that we are talking about talking. Thank you very much that you brought together land and water. Now, when we talk about integrated water resources management, and there are plenty of rules, regulations, recommendations, and yet, except you are opening up what you mentioned, both the nexus connections and particularly land and water, it's probably the key cooperation beyond the traditional water resources management area to be open. How do you envisage it, especially in water scarce countries? And when we talk about water scarce countries, it is always people immediately think water scarcity triggers confrontations, rivalry, conflict. Is it the case, or given your experience in countries which face desertification, or sharing the little is more appealing to humans than sharing the abundance?
Thank you. Yes, the FEW, we call it the FEW, the nexus, the food, energy and water. This nexus is the compass for the sustainable development issues that pertain to the convention, and we think this is a very holistic approach in which this compass, as a compass, also can set up the direction. If you account for the food and energy and water nexus, but also some cross-cutting issues like forestry, migration, gender, which are socioeconomic issues, be of biophysical socioeconomic, but also the ecosystem restoration and the population livelihood. So this is the whole complete aspect of the compass, and the pivot of the compass is land in our proposal. So we think that this compass can, this nexus could be actually achieved if we change from the short-term reactive approach to a more long-term and strategic approach. And this is not, we are getting there with the help probably of the compass is a very good idea, good notion, but we are not yet there. We need to do something, some more action to actually have this get rid of the very many reactive and unilateral or bilateral approaches instead of more holistic and integral approach. In the case of the dryland ecosystems and communities, Yes, one might think that water scarcity is equal to confrontation, conflict, social conflict. And indeed, if you see the drylands, the map of the drylands in the world, and then you see the conflicts, the social and political conflicts, there is some sort of correspondence between drylands and conflicts. But at the level of the community, at the level of the micro level, cooperation on water issues conflict on water issues is less apparent. There is more cooperation with this scarce environment or scarce resource than one could think. This is some of you maybe could pick up this idea and provide some dedicated research on why this sociological aspect occurs when we have some other distortions at the level of the community in drylands. We have migration of men from 15 to 45 years old, and women remaining in the drylands area, with girls fetching the water, and still we have some cooperation on water. This is a very interesting notion that we should study more. And countries have reported that this cooperation and when the resource is scarce is higher than when the resource is more abundant and more like a some sort of a public good that you could go and tap on to it. But this doesn't mean that confrontation is not there. Still, there is some socio-political confrontation that relates to the property rights, who owns the resources, and how the community can take decisions with regards to the natural resource. So this governance issue also has a role to play, and it differs from countries to countries and even from continents to continents. If you have in drylands more a pastoralist sort of nature, you have a different governing process than more sedentary agricultural communities. But I just wanted to share this with you. Perhaps we can deepen a little bit more in second question.
Thank you very much. Mr. van der Wetering, I was almost smiling when you said different mentalities in the Rhine Basin, because they speak French, Dutch and German. And actually, if you look into the whole global picture of water, you would say that probably the Rhine cooperation is the best example that success can be achieved, but it is also supported with an unprecedented political reunification process in Europe. And yet, as you said, 60 more years, trust, confidence, political courage, and time was needed. So, I have two questions. One, also from the film, it was shown in the tragedy in 1986 in Schweizer Halle by Basel. Do we need catalytic events? Do they open a kind of window of opportunity for cooperation? And the second, I go back into your CV, and I saw that you were actively involved in marine issues, marine ecological issues. Where can we delimit water cooperation? Is it only a freshwater issue, or is it a global issue, including marine water, brackish water, shorelines, coastal zones, and so forth?
Thank you for your challenging questions. Yes, I think that in a lot of cases there is an event necessary to change policy, to open your eyes. There are many, many examples of such events in the marine environment, a tanker accident, in the discussion on atomic energy, the use of atomic energy. The change in policy in Germany was triggered by the events in Japan. The fire in the Rhine was really a turning point in the history of the Rhine Commission. We are preparing a separate part on our website now on the history of the Rhine, and this really, when you study the situation before and after the Sandow accident, it's really a turning point. A turning point in the thinking about water pollution, about protection, etc. So yes, I think there is a need for a catalytic event. You have to take the opportunity. So don't sit down and worry, but take the opportunity. And that was also the case what ministers did in the 3 ministerial meetings directly after the accident. Management by disaster, I called it several times already. You need it. How many tanker accidents are connected to development of measures in maritime transport, etc. Yes, water is a cooperation on water is a global issue. I grew up in a way in the marine environment. I was secretary of the OSPA Commission in the protection of the marine environment in the North East Atlantic. Also there, by the way, the birth of this commission was also triggered by such events. Also there, cooperation is required to bring protection of the environment a step further. So sometimes it's necessary on a global scale, sometimes on a regional scale, sometimes on a local scale, but on all these scales, building up cooperation is required.
Thank you very much. Let's open the circle of discussion. I see a number of hands. Okay, ladies first again. You were too central. So, Professor Evers.
Maria Evers, Geography Department from the University of Bonn. I would like to, I think my question is much or mostly related to Ben van der Watering and, sorry, watering, not watering.
For today
This was Freud. It's mostly on the different instruments we discussed already on different levels. And the conventions are often called kind of toothless tigers, and the Rhine Convention or the Rhine Commission, which is not a legally binding commission on the activities, is a proof of the opposite. That is very successful story. And but my question is, how much is that related? You told us it's much about trust and confidence, but maybe also kind of solidarity on the one hand. But what role is our incentives playing, or some pressures or something like that? Because the opposite example is maybe the Water Framework Directive with a very, you call it sophisticated. Some people say it's a monster, it's so detailed.
It's not. It's
so detailed but very strong instruments.
It's a strong instrument.
Very clear objectives and potential sanction and so on. And what role is here, the solidarity, or is there any room for solidarity, this kind of flexibility? So my question is, are these instruments complementary, or is it also a matter of scale, maybe? So what is your view on this?
Yeah. Well, two parts in my answer. The first, an inside story of some of the events that happened after the Sardou fire, and I heard this from an insider. It was a fire in Switzerland, which was at that moment one of the cleaner countries in Europe. Nevertheless, this fire happened. The Dutch minister at the first meeting directly, I think it was in December '86, so directly after the fire, didn't open the meeting blaming Switzerland that they messed up the whole situation, but she said, this could have happened to all of us. So a common problem. This common problem was identified already in the first meeting on the 11th of July 1950, the first meeting of the Rhine Commission. So this common problem, the need for a common solution is essential, I think, whatever framework, whatever legal framework you have. Identifying a common problem, even with a toothless tiger, you can reach a lot, because the convention for the Rhine was in fact also not very strong. It's a framework without strong, legally binding measures as a possibility. Now I forgot the second part.
Yeah, so that was more on solidarity or to
Yeah,
cooperation.
yeah.
But what role is do incentives play here? Is there or sanctions or stronger?
I think you need a balance between the legal stick behind the door, which is in fact the Water Framework Directive in the European context, and the political framework that in fact the Rhine Convention was. It's the Rhine Convention, the success is built on political will, political trust, political confidence and courage. And then you have now, since the year 2000, this legal stick behind the door. In some cases, a legal stick is required. In the context of the development of the Marine Strategy Directive, I heard a colleague from Greece saying, without this legal stick, nothing will happen in countries like Greece. And that might be true or not, but in any case that was the feeling at a certain moment. So this legal stick is, there is a need for a balance between the legal power of frameworks and the political trust and will and courage. And my personal feeling is that at the moment in the European context the balance is a bit too much towards the legalities instead of political vision, etc. So it's
Okay, so it's some opposing views in the panel. It's a good chance that we have a kind of tension along this axis, so please.
Yeah, yes, it's a lot about solidarity, that's clear. And it's also the International River Basin Commissions and the countries' obligations to fulfill EU provisions is of course different levels, but of course they are interlinked because the ICPR is the coordination platform for implementing the Water Framework Directive or the EU Floods Directive, so that's clear. And you talk, I would not agree with Ben, then he says, yes, the legal side is overwhelming. It's not, from my point of view, it's not really true, because we are implementing EU water law because it's good for our waters, not because we have the EU Commission behind, which is threatening with the legal court of justice. So for us, we are doing it because we think it's a useful way to protect rivers, to do that transboundary. So that is an incentive in itself. And also because we learned in these international river basin commissions that talking with each other means we increase mutual understanding, but we also talk about how do you do this? How do you have another approach or another idea how to do this? For example, how to build fish ladders, how to talk with the public. So every country has its own approaches, and we try to exchange views and try to find some sort of common approach, or at least approaches you can compare with each other. So that is for us an incentive without meaning money or something like that. So the sanction point of view for me is sometimes a nuisance, and you need it, but for at least my experience on national level and on international level is a bit different.
Thank you. I'm tempted to draw a parallel between the willingness of the Germans to live with the law and pay taxes on bank deposits, and some countries in the European Union may need some sticks, but okay.
That's true. That's true.
Okay.
Yeah, there is a big difference between the countries, and we are not perfect either, but nevertheless, I think the usefulness and the positive approach is better than threatening with sticks.
Yes, I have worked 5 years in Syria. I have guided a research project. And there's a big problem because Turkey is building a lot of dams, and the countries downstream, they are suffering from that. And as far as I know, there is no agreement between Syria and Iraq and Turkey.
No, that's true.
And this is an issue I would like to put to Sergio Zelaya, because we should work a little bit on that. We see that in Europe everything is, there's trust and confidence.
Not only in Europe.
But it's a problem. And are you working on that? Because Syria is a country where water is needed for agriculture, Iraq for ecology, and prices are going up, and now you have war and civil war and all these things. It's horrible.
So thank you for the question. Yes, the Syria, they actually used to manage a thematic program network on water for the Asian continent within the convention. And but this is just one example that you have. I can mention one which is higher, the Blue Nile and the Egypt and Ethiopia. And this is not the last 50 years, it's for the last 2,000 years that they have been discussing. But of course the dams have come, have been constructed within the last 75 years from one country. So what happens to the other country? Well, if the water were to be left alone without the dams, it will not be sufficient for everyone. So what to do? This is a water scarce environment in Ethiopia and in Egypt. I don't know if somebody is from Ethiopia or Egypt here, so
I know
my apologies. My apology if I have said something that is not the right thing. But what I wanted just to mention on the experience of what just happened here is that I think that in Europe, and not in Turkey and in Syria and in Iran or in Ethiopia and Egypt or in the South America part of the Guarani watershed, the issue of awareness creation was there here in Europe with the Sando experience and with the different elements that contributed to an awareness creation that in place helped to create policies and research on the situation of the Rhine, the situation of UNCE, the Water Convention, which we know that is being open to at a global scale. And already, I think last week there were 5 countries already outside of the Europe that have ratified the convention or intended to ratify the convention. So this awareness creation creates research for policy development and then for action. On the other hand, what we foster and advocate for in countries such as on these river basin approaches that you mentioned, one is what are the services that the basin provides to the community. First. Second, what is the cost of you not acting with regard to these services? And the third, are there some aspects of horizontal cooperation, lessons learned, and technology transfer that could be tapped into or could be used into this specific issue? This is not short-term solution. It's a long-term and sometimes even generational solutions. But we have to start creating this awareness and providing the research. If you put the map of where this well, let's take Canada out, because Canada is an anomaly, you know, in water thing. So we take Canada out and you put where the water scarce environments and where the resources are and where the research, the scientific research comes from, and there is no compatibility. Research is being done elsewhere from where the natural resource is existing or is needed. So how can we tap into this research in the South? Yes, I am from the South, but not because of that, just because of this awareness. This scientific research has to be also born where the natural resource is needed or is available, and this is not happening yet. So I don't know if I could answer the question.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. Fabrice Renaud from UNUEHS. One more connection maybe, I don't know if you could add, is a connection between surface and groundwater and cooperation in that domain. Can you maybe tell us what you're doing on that front? I know that for groundwater it's a nascent exercise, but I think that we often disconnect these two, and maybe we shouldn't.
With regard to the Water Framework Directive, it's clear the basin consists of surface water, groundwater, transitional waters and coastal water. So this is the whole system. So of course we are doing a lot on EU level on groundwater. There's a groundwater protection directive. We have limit values for the groundwater. We have also approaches with regard to groundwater quantity. Because in Europe, groundwater quantity in the south, yes, is a problem, but for example, for Germany, it's not a problem. But of course, we are controlling, monitoring that, and of course, we have nitrate problems in our groundwater, so we try to do something with regard to agriculture, rather difficult thing. Also, the UNEC Water Convention covers surface water and groundwater, so we have just in the 6th meeting of the parties in Rome in November last year agreed on model provisions on groundwater to help the countries which have special problems with regard to transboundary aquifers to have some material for bilateral or trilateral agreements. And the UN Convention does not really cover groundwater, so that is why I think that all these conventions come together. UNESCO just has a big project or consultation process on groundwater to put together the knowledge. So there's a lot of going on, but it's also in Europe, also in Germany, surface water people and groundwater people are two communities, and it's sometimes we miss to get them together. That's true. So that has really to be kept in the background of the brain to do things on that. But there are processes and discussions on that, and as I said, for the UNEC Water Convention, we try to put that more into on the discussion level, that there is a need to do something. There is a need also coming from the country saying, I have problems with my neighbor with regards to, I don't know, spa water, and he's taking all the water and I don't take the water, and so I don't get the water, and my spa or wellness hotels drying out, and these things like that. So very practical. So there are experiences. For example, there is an agreement between Germany and Austria about a big spa water aquifer. We have a very close commonly agreed monitoring, and all, if you have new extraction licenses, it's the other countries informed. We try to model what will happen if they draw out 100,000 liters more and things like that. So we have examples which we try to explain also to the other countries how to deal with that, and of course not copying it one-to-one, because that's often not possible, but to say, okay, we have the same problems. Often it's a question about saying, look, you are not the only one with the problem. We also had a problem, and we needed 10 years until we had this agreement. And so they say, oh yes, you had the same problem. Oh, okay. So, and then you start talking. And groundwater really is an issue you have to keep more focused on.
Can I mention something? Yes. Well, Heide mentioned a lot of the Water Convention. Actually, in the UN, the UN system, there are conventions for forests. The UN, I would call conventions or programs or agencies. You have on water, on forests, on atomic energy, on industry. We have on tourism, on health, on whatever. You name it, we have it, except on water. There is not a convention on water and within the UN. But there are 26 institutions that we have a little bit of a mandate on water. And this is a challenging issue when you address the surface water community and the groundwater community, because they don't speak the same language, even though they have the water thing there. So the same with other elements on where, for example, Janusz was mentioning the brackish water approach. This is a challenge that we have to resolve. Perhaps, I don't know, but perhaps the Water Convention, the European Convention, now that it's becoming global, and if indeed it becomes global, can also help to achieve and force and advocate for this integration. This is what I could say.
Good afternoon. Juan Carlos Villarán from UN Spider Office for Outer Space Affairs. I'm going to put my hat as person coming from a developing country. It's very interesting to see how the Rhine River Commission functions. And one of the things that I would like to ask you is, imagine the following situation. So there are developing countries where, unfortunately, the economic limitations are such that even if the will could be there to have some kind of a transboundary effort, whether it's the international stock prices do not allow you, or poverty, or the fact that you have so little funding, how could cities, regional governments, national governments build a cause for such a transboundary agreement? How do you think we could convince people that yes, having a cleaner basin benefits everybody, including those who are at the top, who may be in one country and have no relation to people downstream who are in a totally different country? What would your suggestion be to try to come up with a successful arguments or ways to move forward on such a transboundary effort to clean a basin that may have been like the Rhine Basin decades ago and would like to clean it?
Who wants to start? Because I believe this is a question all three panelists could feel challenged to give an answer.
Well, when I go back some 60 years in the history of the Rhine, 5 years after the Second World War, well, you cannot describe that situation as trust between countries, etc. There was a lot of damage done but still countries decided to sit together. As the first 10-15 years they spent on identifying what their common problem was, setting up a monitoring system, and in the meantime thinking about a legal framework, which was signed in 1963, the first legal framework. So the first step is identify your common enemy, the common problem. And if you know the common problem, you can find also how to address that problem in terms of solutions. That would be my general advice on steps to be taken. And again, it has a lot of research in it. Identify what the problem is, identify monitoring, identify assessment tools to assess what the problem is.
I just wanted to say yes, but in practical approaches, there is a difference between among, let's say, three countries. One extremely huge country and very powerful, and two smaller countries. This can happen in Asia, or can be happen in North America, or in South America, or in Africa. In any of these continents, there is this situation, and the relative negotiating power of the countries is as such relative. So the issue of endogenous knowledge, internal research, I think that I'm not thinking this because I just want to think of this. This is what the parties have said in the convention where I work, that there is a need to create knowledge at the level of the community. And this is still, we are very far from doing that.
I would say first, it's important that there's a real will that you want to get into contact with each other. So if the will is there, even on a very local or regional level, then I think the two or how many countries should start very simple. So not saying, oh, our aim is to have an international agreement, or our aim is to have, extensive monitoring programs or something like that. So really start with the basic things. Start to talk with each other. Try to have regular meetings, so to get to know each other. Then try to define your problem you have, or the common problem you have. And then, of course, it's a question of resources. Make simple things. For example, common trips to problematic strips of the river or something like that. So don't don't say, okay, we need sophisticated monitoring programs or something like that. Or make it very simple. Go there and see what is in the river, how it looks like, how it smells, and then build up on that step by step. And in the end, you may have an international agreement or a bilateral agreement. But we have examples where we say, okay, they agreed on some sort of cooperation which does not necessarily need a legal basis. That could come later. But I think everybody thinks that, yes, you come together, you find a solution, that's it. And that's not like it works. You need time, a lot of time. And I think that is something which the people should have in their minds from the beginning on. So that there is progress and then there are steps back. And this is something which also they should be very clear about from the beginning on.
Usually in water lectures, the most difficult questions are asked by PhD candidates of CEF. So far, today it did not happen. So and I believe there are some of this very sharp-minded community around, so those are challenged to challenge the panel. So I'm looking for someone who is, let's say, there were many young people ask questions, but I'm looking now explicitly for the less than 30 generation. Yes, please.
Me, I want to make a question.
If you would identify yourself that...
But I'm not a student here.
Yeah, okay, but it's also... Okay, but you have a name and...
Okay, my name is Jesus, and I might make a question which is maybe kind of problematic, but still I'm very interested because of the levels that we talk about here, the different levels of how to deal with a problem that goes transboundary, in particularly the Rhine. So I have been reading lately, and maybe it's old information, but nowadays is developing a technology for extracting gas which might damage groundwater, water.
Fracking,
yeah. And North Rhine-Westphalia is one of the regions candidates in Germany for developing this technology, and I just wanted to know if it represents a threat for the ecosystem of the basin of the Rhine, and how it's going to deal, because I mean, if North Rhine-Westphalia does it, it will be affected rather later in Belgium, or so that's what just my question on which approach are they going to give it to deal with it legally or.
Yeah, I can answer that. It's the fracking issue is at the moment in a very current issue in political and public discussion in Germany, and the question is if these unconventional gas, if it can be released from the soil by this fracking procedure. That means you press a liquid underground and then the gas gets free and you can collect it. I'm a lawyer, I'm sorry. So, of course there's it sounds easy, but of course the problem is we don't know what effects these liquids will have. So when the gas gets out of the soil, if you have some sort of little earthquakes and things like that. But at the moment, the main issue is the protection of groundwater and the resources for drinking water. So for them, and of course this, because we changed our energy policy and we want to get away from nuclear power. So of course these new energy sources are of interest. But at the moment there's no license to do that, and we are just changing our national water law to forbid fracking in water protection areas, which are used for drinking water, and also trying to make the licensing procedure such that all the environmental effects could be taken into account. So for the moment it's a possibility, but there are no licenses to do it for the moment. Of course there are sites with such gas also in the other parts of Europe. So for example, in the Rhine Commission, we are just starting an information exchange on this fracking issue, so what is done in the different countries. So we do something in Germany, to have some sort of protection, but of course our energy enterprises, they are really interested in getting this source because we have a big potential, and it might be that the overall amount of this gas could help to provide Germany over a decade with gas. So it's interesting, but at the moment there's no solution.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I'm Charles from Zephyr. And my concern or question is that we have been talking about these conventions on water, and we look at the ones that are being adopted in Europe, whilst or being used in Europe, and we are trying to make it global. But how does such a convention will work in a system where we have weaker institutions? So does the conventions come as a package where in countries or in regions where we have weaker institutions, there's a way of supporting them to develop those institutions to put in place these conventions for it to be effective? Or it's just a convention, and a good convention might not work well in a very poor environment? And my second one is also about the Rhine program, which is very nice in trying to bring the salmon back and other stuff. But if you look at what happens also in other basins, there are different competing needs. And people are talking about how to survive and not about seeing it as a luxury. So how can we adapt the Rhine situation into a very difficult situation where people are doing something totally different from what we see in the ideal situation that I see as the Rhine case?
Well, first, thank you very much that you proved my point, that the most difficult questions are come from PhD candidates. I believe this is a good question to all of the panelists, first and foremost because Dr. Zeller is coming from a convention where many of the developing countries are party of and being serviced by the secretariats, and also those who are from the Rhine. So, and I would say that unless there is any urgent question from anyone else, with these three answers we shall also close the evening. Who wants to start?
Sergio.
Sergio. So by popular request, please.
Yes, the convention is, once it's on the table, it's a take it or leave it issue. So the countries either ratify the convention or not ratify the convention. It's like the general declaration of human rights, or you take them all, you cannot go shopping for this one and this one I don't want, I want that one. So the whole package of the convention, the UNECE convention, water convention is on the table for all of us, all of our countries to assess whether it's a good opportunity to sign it and ratify it. So that's all I have to say for that one. On the second one, on the second issue, yes, there are many competing needs on the specific rivers and watersheds and basins throughout the world, in many parts of the world, and what are the lessons that the Rhine experience can bring to this other watershed river basins. It's I think the one that strikes me the most interesting is that all the users came on board and having this awareness of the need to do something. In many parts of the world, not all the users come and sit on the table, and this is the one problem. The same happens with that happens on water can happen on agriculture, for example. If all the users and the consumers and the producers are not sitting down on the table, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So that's why we see in Africa, and Latin America, and in Asia that when the negotiation of the international waters in I mean 2 or 3 countries, if you don't have the private sector, you don't have the community, the local community, and all of those that have some sort of right on the water, it will not work. So this is my answer.
the UNEC Water Convention is a convention which takes care of the countries who want to ratify it. So there are missions into the countries to explain the convention and to explain what the countries should do to ratify and to fulfill the obligations. We have a guide on the implementation of the convention, so to explain each of the provisions. We have, for example, in Central Asia, the so-called national policy dialogues. That is that the UNEC Water Convention, together with other organizations, go to the countries, try to put together the relevant ministries, and to explain the convention to them, and to say, okay, you have first to talk with each other, then if you want to ratify the convention, we will help you, we will guide you through this process, and later on also helping you to implement. So there is some sort of help desk function also from the UNECE Water Convention, its secretariat and us member states to go there to give workshops, so to not let the countries who want to ratify it alone, but to help them to ratify and to understand the convention. So this is yes. For the UNECE convention that exists. For the UN convention, for the moment not, because it's not into force. In the UN convention there is no working structure decided on, so that has to be a decision which we have to take when this comes into force. Of course you cannot, with regard to the Rhine, you cannot transport the experience of the Rhine and say, for example, an African basin, do the same. That will not work. But we have a lot of exchange with other basins and other countries. For example, Ben will say that he has a lot of visits from other basins, for example, from the Mekong Commission or from the Lake Chad Commission or from the Danube works together with the Orange River Commission. So there is a lot of exchange between the existing organizations and commissions. We have this network of, international network of river basin organizations, which is organized by France, which meets regularly. And so of course you can use the Rhine experience, but of course adapt it to the needs in the basins. So, for example, when we had this, when you will remember, we had this visit from the Lake Chad Commission. They explained their organization, it was very interesting, and we explained our organization and how we deal with issues, and of course their problems are completely different from ours. They have a lot of water scarcity problems because the lake is shrinking very much, and you can exchange views, you can exchange experience, but of course you cannot copy because each case is different. But of course if we say, okay, we try to tackle it like this or that, do you think it would be useful to do it also in your case? And they say, no, but perhaps we have this and this problem. Then you talk and try to perhaps come together and say, okay, perhaps this and this adapted approach would be useful. Or you go there and say, yes, they say, come and visit us, and we discuss that in more detail. So there are processes how to adapt experiences to the special cases.
Well, not so much to add anymore, because well, what I wrote down was that a simple copy-paste approach is not possible. Full stop. That's out of any question. What for me is challenging in the many visits we have from abroad, from people from other river basins, from the Lake Chad or the Niger or whatever, the countries in this region come to us because they started talking to each other. And I think that's the challenging, that's the main point. And they may learn from us, but they have to develop their own and identify their own problem, what they share. But the point that they started talking to us and then come to us, started talking to each other, then come to us to maybe learn from us, that's the challenging point. That's the encouraging point.
Thank you very much. I drew 3 T's from all your statements and responses. It is talk, trust, and time.
Yes.
Now, this is true. Thank you. The first one. Let me finish with 2 juxtaposed little stories. In the late last century, when I was still active in UNESCO, we had a joke. The joke went, what is common between China, Turkey and Burundi. Burundi. Turkey, China and Burundi. And no one could find it. The answer was these countries voted against the UN Convention in the General Assembly. But there were many countries who voted for it. And as you said, and it's still not in force, because voting yes is a nice thing,
Yeah.
but you have to ratify. And at least 40 countries has to ratify in order to enter
Enter into force.
35.
35, and now we are at 30.
28.
28, okay, so time will heal this problem. The second thing is a little bit against what we advocated today, talk. There is also action needed. And an action comes from Cyprus, a country which is now in the headlines with a very negative connotation, and also it is the only divided country in Europe, and yet in this divided country, a city in the Turkish-occupied northern part, Famagusta, has been and being supplied by drinking water from the Cypriot Greek part of the. So there is water across barbed wire, across borders, across hot borders. Water is flowing and proving the ultimate willingness of people to share, and as such, water everywhere, only if we share. And fortunately, there are examples where we share. Thank you very much for your attention and participation. Thank you for the panelists for their interesting and important contributions. Thank you.
I have brought some brochures. Please take them with you, because I don't want to take them back. They are outside on the table and here on the table about UNEC and the Rhine and Danube and everything. So please take them with you.